Oh, right, I start. It's going to be one of those shows, Carl. 3, 2, 1.
Oh, welcome to the Fourth Line Podcast, part of Full Press Radio. This is February the 28th, 2021. With today is myself, Carl, and Stevie Nick.
As you can tell from that intro, Carl, I'm a tired boy today.
What's got you so tired today?
It's a long weekend, and not the good kind.
Not one of those joyous long weekends, just a very busy
Just a busy, long weekend. And today's Monday. Why do we record on Mondays?
You know what? I ask myself that often. So how about maybe just a couple more months of recording on Mondays, then we stop?
That sounds like a plan. That sounds like the plan.
Like 4 more. We got March, April, May, June, July. 5 months left of this podcast.
Yeah, pretty much until what do we should probably decide this at some point, but we're just going until the Stanley Cup's awarded.
I wasn't sure. Yeah. I figured at the latest we do free agency and the draft and then a goodbye episode.
Yeah.
I think because
that makes sense.
AKA my wife asked me this today. She's like, when are you guys actually stopping? So I think the 25th of July is the latest date we will ever record a show. Maybe
That's
we'll stop sooner.
All hockey news is over. Everyone takes off to their cottages. We do our goodbye episode.
Yeah.
I like it.
So that's the latest
when all the attention will be on us, obviously.
Right. When we can just really focus on what's most important, and that is our show. So you had a busy weekend, and I was wondering, because I discovered something very interesting this weekend. At what point this weekend did you realize that there was an outdoor NHL game taking place?
Oh, man. The day of. I'm not even joking. It was 1:30 p.m. on Saturday, and I turned on the TV to watch a bit of that Oilers Hurricanes game. And as I do when I watch hockey, I'm scrolling through Twitter, and then I saw that outdoor game was happening. If I didn't have time this weekend to sit down and watch hockey in the middle of the day, I would have never known.
So you sat down. You said the Oilers Hurricanes game?
Yeah. Wasn't that on Saturday?
That was on Sunday. So you discovered the day after it was done.
Yeah. Are you sure? Are you sure it was on Sunday, Carl?
Oilers Hurricanes was the high sticking game on Sunday.
Yeah, you're right.
So you didn't know it was on until it was over.
I guess not, because I didn't watch a daytime game on Saturday then.
Because you know how I discovered when we put out the tweet for high sticking and started getting posts in, and someone literally at the game was like, "Hey, I'm going to the outdoor game today. Why isn't it this?" At which point I realized, outside of actual attendance, no one cares about outdoor games anymore.
They do a very poor job of marketing them. And it's gotten worse. But I think part of the problem is, and this debate has been raging on this show since probably you guys started it however many years ago. There's too many of them. When there was just one outdoor game, first of all, it was easy for people like me or us to keep track of it and know when it was coming. And they marketed the heck out of it. Now there's just too many. There's too many.
Yeah, I very much agree. But it's interesting because I think I was the last diehard saying, hey, we should care about these outdoor games. They're fun. They're a good experience. And I still think that for those, clearly every Tampa Bay Lightning fan that showed up to that game in Nashville on Saturday had a blast of a time. But it is very much an in-person experience now, and the NHL has just leaned into that and doesn't bother marketing it.
Yeah, pretty much, right? It's all about the experience live while you're there, which, having been to a few of them myself, it can be very good. It can be a lot of fun, and I'd love to go to one where they really dial up the experience in person.
You want, I don't know, which mediocre rock band or old rock band do you want to play at the halftime intermissions?
Which one do I want?
Yeah, to really ramp up that experience for you.
Oh man, the bands I would want to see live would not go over well at an NHL game. They wouldn't, Carl. I'm thinking though. Let me think about one. I'm trying to think about who I listened to today at work.
I was going to say right now, mostly because of your attire. I assume that you would want like some City and Color as a choice.
You know what? No, I wouldn't choose City and Color, even though like that style of music perfectly suits my mood right now. Nice here's a band I listened to this morning, Panic at the Disco.
Ooh, that sounds very much like an NHL choice.
Totally, right? Yeah, it does. So I think that would be a good one for them.
I think that sounds great. It's
generic enough.
When was the last time Detroit hosted an outdoor game?
When they hosted it?
Yeah. Have they ever hosted?
Yeah, they have. It was against Toronto. It was at the Big House.
It was at the Big House, yeah.
Yeah. I want to say it was 2014.
Because that's owned by the university. I would assume the Illiches would want to now have one at Tiger Stadium where they can make money off of both ends of it.
Well, they did have a rink there, and that's where they hosted like the alumni games and all the other kind of fun stuff that comes along with that week and that weekend.
Okay.
So they did have it there. And then there was another one Detroit participated. Well, I mean, Detroit's participated in a lot, but the other one I went to was here in Toronto a few years ago, the Centennial Classic.
And that was at the soccer stadium?
It was at the soccer stadium. Yeah.
I wonder how terrible of an idea it would be to crack open the roof of Sky Dome in the middle of winter to play a hockey game.
Why would that be a bad idea?
Because
they should do it.
Cannot handle moving. It's not a new roof. I assume you get any weight of snow on there, and it's not going anywhere.
Don't they know after like 10 years you're supposed to have your roof redone?
They're too busy figuring out how to put grass in that thing. So, anyways, nonetheless, did not know until high sticking player, one of our listeners, chimed in and let me know. Do
you know how many outdoor games there have been this year so far?
I assume 2, the New Year's one and this one.
I have no idea who even played in the New Year's one. Didn't Dallas? Pittsburgh and Philadelphia play in one outdoor as well?
Did they? I'm going to go with Dallas as the team. I think Dallas hosted it.
Let's see.
While Nick looks that up, there was much bigger. I mean, one other reason why all of this happened was there's been much bigger news in the entire world. And as happens with news as of late, it continues to force itself into the sports world, whether we like it or not. And the big news this week was everything happening in Ukraine between them and Russia. The Russian invasion or attack in Ukraine, or I don't even know what we're calling it at this point in time. But that whole situation has become an issue in hockey as many players are commenting on it, speaking out. But also today, the IIHF, International Ice Hockey Federation, came forward and banned both Russia and Belarus from any future participation until further notice.
It's a pretty big move on the IIHF's part. I don't know if it's unprecedented. Like, I'm not familiar enough with history in general to know if this has been done before or not. But considering the size of Russia in the hockey world, right? Like the amount of players that come over to North America to play in the NHL, some pretty big names. On the international stage, they're pretty consistently, close to the top of the standings or medal rankings or whatever you want to call it. There's always Russians going in the first round of the NHL draft. So considering how big this sport is to that country, it's a pretty big deal for them to be kicked out of international play.
Yeah, a really big deal. And I mean, especially we saw recently, right, in the last number of years, Olympic bans for Russia. We've had the Russian teams competing as athletes of Russia or something like that. I forget the actual name, but certainly this ban is big. But what, do you think that it's the right approach for the IIHF to do?
I do. Yeah. I think that kind of the world's doing its best right now to respond to this in a non military or violent fashion. And I think that requires everyone across all industries to kind of flex what little muscle they might have. So to me, this is like the hockey world doing its part to try and help.
I definitely agree with that. And I'm torn, and I'm honestly, that's partially why like I was against us even talking about this night, because I don't know where and how I stand. Now, I do fully agree that like Russia should not be doing what it's doing.
Mm-hmm.
But is it necessary? And I'm genuinely asking, because I know that you think it is. Like, will it be helpful? I know you said a small part, but like, does it do anything to say you can't play in the under 18 women's ice hockey tournament coming up? Do you think is that on anyone's radar making the decisions in Russia right
now? Maybe not the people making the, military strategic decisions, but there's definitely a minister of sport in Russia. It used to be Slava Fetisov. I don't know if it still is. But so there is a minister for sport there, and all of this falls under him or her. I don't actually know who it is anymore. So yeah, I think,
I'm looking it up.
The more like that to me is a person in power at the government level. So maybe they're not calling the shots on whatever's happening with the Ukraine. But it's still flexing some muscle against the Russian government, I think. We're sitting here having a conversation. We're by no means, politic experts here, but
no, certainly not. No one has ever accused me of that. The current one is Oleg Matitsyn, who
I'm sure that's somebody.
Looks like he's been involved in the not so much the play side, but the kind of the underworkings and back behind the scenes side of Russian sport for decades. So nonetheless, I do get that. I understand that. It just seems so, I guess when I look at everything that's happening and I look at these tournaments that like you have 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people show up to in the Czech Republic, and you're like, sorry, you can't go to that, Russia. And it just doesn't seem like that big of a thing. And also are we asking those players? And that's maybe my biggest issue is like, there's people being punished for things that are not their doing. And I just wonder, like, is that the place of sport? Is sport, and as I say this, I almost second guess myself because I ask, is sport not supposed to be unifying? And it clearly is unifying everyone against one side. So I don't know. That's kind of, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's a tough one because in international competition, you're representing your country. You're wearing their colors and you're wearing their flags. And to me, you're kind of standing up for everything they stand up for and represent. Maybe not on a personal level, but I think that's kind of what happens when you put that sweater on your head. And we've seen in the past how international hockey isn't just about unifying. It is about, politics, and it is about conflict. We've seen that with the Russians in the past. Now I'm talking about a long time ago. So yeah, I don't know. Is it gonna be the reason? Is it gonna be the thing that makes the Russian government be like this is we've gone way too far. They're canceling hockey. Like, no,
Right.
probably not. But I think you pile it on to everything else that other sports are doing, other industries are doing, and other countries are doing. And I think it all adds up. I hope.
Yeah, I get that. And you know what, the more we talk about and the more we kind of dive into this, I'm definitely, solidifying my own thought on that. It is the right approach. That said, so it has been suggested by some that the NHL should ban all Russians from participating at this point in time. Is that too far? Or is that also like they're not representing the country, but they're from there?
I think that's a step too far. Because, yeah, they're not putting that country's flag or colors on their chest. They're representing their team first, their organization. They're employees of private businesses in North America.
Right. Absolutely. Well, and I think especially when and we see, right, players, I think my very first goes to Artemi Panarin, who's like, before all of this, was against a lot of what is currently politically happening in Russia and has spoken out about it. So to say, hey, you before this was ever the issue, you were coming out against these issues.
Yeah.
And to then punish and be like, sorry, you don't agree with this, we don't agree with this, but because of where you're from, you don't get to participate.
Yeah, and don't forget they're unionized too, right? Like they pay into a players union that will not let that happen. Like that would be a very, very hard move for the NHL to make.
And that you have mentioned precedents. That would be unprecedented.
Yes.
A professional sports organization banning a specific group of people for reasons like that will not happen.
Yeah. But the KHL is in a tough spot right now. I don't know if you've been following some of that news.
I saw Dynamo Riga left.
Yeah. And the team in Finland, Jokerit.
Yeah.
They left. And I think the Canadian American governments are telling Canadian and American citizens, like, if you can get out of Russia right now, do. And there's a lot of players playing in the KHL right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. So very interesting. I mean, they'd canceled the end of before this happened, right? After the Olympics, they canceled the end of their season and were skipping straight to playoffs in lieu of COVID issues that have happened and slowed things down, etc. But more issues happening in the KHL with just trying to get teams.
Yeah, it's the whole thing that's happening is obviously awful. There are parts of it that I find to be very interesting, especially how some of this industry outside of like around the world is responding to it. And I mean things like, the NHL put out a statement today. The FIFA and IIHF, they're all kind of taking action against Russia, which isn't really a move I saw happening when this all got started.
Well, no. And it's what, I don't even know. It's been such a whirlwind week with it all. Like, for where it started and where it's gotten to in less than a week has been, I mean, in this age of quickness of information and all of that, shouldn't surprise me, but same thing. Canada today, Hockey Canada came out and said, not just IIHF tournaments, but any non-IIHF tournament, Russian teams are not welcome for either. So
yeah, just trying to squeeze the country for any way they can.
Yeah, and whatever it takes to make it stop and work.
Yeah,
I'm in favor of. So
totally. All
right, let's get to literally like could not be. There is no appropriate transition from one topic to the next here. There is no segue, but we need to cycle back to something we talked about last week.
Yes, we do.
because last week we did a dive into the life and times of one Jonathan Bernier. It was just a flippant comment that was made, but then it turned into a bet. It turned into some amazing research work by Mike Laybourne, because do you remember the exact statement you made last week?
I think I said something to the effect that Jonathan Bernier was never the worst goalie on a team that he played for.
That sounds about right.
It was something to that effect.
Yeah. That Jonathan Bernier has never, not the worst goalie on any team he ever played for. So we need to find out. Now, are we talking, when we look at this, are we talking season? When you meant that, did you mean like any season or like a stretch of time with a team? Was that ever the case?
I think I meant season.
Okay, so there was never a season that Jonathan Bernier was the worst player on, or the worst goalie on his team.
Yeah.
And so I looked at some numbers. But actually, before we get to that, before we looked at any numbers, you and I had a bet.
Yeah, we did. I thought you were going to say before we look at any numbers, if you're going to allow me to withdraw my comments so we could just move on.
I'm sure that's coming.
No, we had a bet, as we do every time Detroit and Colorado play each other.
There's some sort of bet. The bet this week was the best Jonathan Bernier inspired bet imaginable.
Yeah.
Well, I think Jonathan Bernier played for both of our teams, right? Colorado and Detroit.
Is appropriate.
And one time made quite the gaffe when he thought that, when he spoke quite highly of how Nelson Mandela was one of the greatest athletes of all time.
One of the best hockey interview clips, I think, ever.
Because he was at like a red carpet event for something being put on by the foundation, was it not?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's just a blunder on so many levels. Like, I still have so many questions about it. Who invited him? Why didn't they tell him what it was? Why didn't he ask someone what it was? There should have been a briefing package. If you're going to walk a red carpet and have your picture taken and talk to media, why was there no briefing package?
Well, at least the team, at least someone, right? You're like, hey, Jonathan, do you know what you're going to? Yeah, Nelson Mandela. I guess maybe they just assumed if he knew where he was going, he had an idea because he said yes.
You know what? In their defense, that's a safe assumption to make.
Right? I'm not, if someone had, hey, do you want to go to this foundation for this guy? Like, I don't know who that is. I wouldn't show up.
Well, I might. Depends if there's an open bar or not, but I would Google it first.
Right. Do you want, look, nowadays you need to figure out what you're attending to make sure it's above board. I also want to know, my other question, what sport did he think he played?
I don't know.
Like, did he think he was a hockey player? Like, is this how limited his knowledge was, that he was like, yeah, Nelson Mandela, right winger, number 47 for the Pittsburgh Penguins, great career, fantastic guy, love him.
I mean, this is you gotta assume, I don't know, man. You'd think that when he got there, there'd be like posters and not billboards, but like pictures up and stuff. And like he wasn't a young man when he was photographed a lot.
No. All right. Nonetheless, that led to the bet being that the losing team would pay $5 per goal to the Nelson Mandela Children's Foundation.
Yes. And I can't remember how many total goals scored because my mind was blown by the Saturday game, which we'll talk about later. How many goals scored was it in our Colorado game? Was it 5-2?
I want to say it was 5-3. It might have been 5-2.
I think it was 5-2.
I know there wasn't Gabe Landeskog empty netter at the end.
5-2.
It was 5-2? Okay.
Yeah.
So, Nick, I appreciate your donation, your future donation.
7 total goals.
Yeah.
What do we say? $5 per goal?
5 per goal.
So $35. All right, I'm going to round it up to 50.
And you know what? In the spirit of giving, I'll match that.
Wow.
We'll each do $50. It's a good cause. They do great work helping children. So there you go. Thank you, Jonathan Bernier.
Thank you, Gabe Landeskog.
Yeah. Many thanks to go around. Before we we're going to get to Jonathan Bernier's life and times. But let's take a break here first. We'll be back on the other side, taking a look at what he's been doing.
Okay.
Three, two, one.
All right. Let's get this out of the way.
Do you want to get out of the way by retracting your statement?
No. I don't want to retract my statement.
Okay.
Even if we get to the end of this and it turns out I was wrong, I'm not ready to retract my statement. And we'll talk about why once we get through this.
All right. So let's start at the beginning. Jonathan Quick started as an LA King, then played 3 years in Toronto, a year in Anaheim, a year in Colorado, then 3 years in Detroit, and now is a New Jersey Devil. I want to say those first 2 years where he played a combined 7 games, I don't think that's fair to include.
That's fine. I think that's fair.
Okay, so we got his LA Kings career from 2010 to 2013. Now, at that time, the LA Kings were quite the team. Jonathan Quick was in net, the starting goalie,
Still is
leading him being Bernier, to hold the backup role. Now, when I look at that, and I'm going to lean pretty heavily, like I said, Mike Laybourne did some amazing research. And what we're actually going to do is this week's episode, if you head to thefourthlinepodcast.com, this week's episode, I'm actually going to he wrote a great article, and I'm just going to use that as the base for our episode. And I'm just going to put that in there. You can head on, check out what he's got, because it is a deep, deep dive into all of this.
Perfect.
But he looked at it during that LA King stretch. He played 62 games, had a .912 save percentage and a .236, which is slightly worse than Jonathan Quick's .915 and .232.
Quick just barely outdid him. But Jonathan Bernier, if I were to come to you today before you saw these numbers, and I said, what do you think Jonathan Bernier's save percentage was on the LA Kings? Would you have guessed it was over 910?
I would have probably put it around 900 to 910.
Yeah, I would have thought it was way lower. I would have thought it was in the 900 range, to be honest with you.
Yeah, so here's my issue with this, and it'll become more prevalent. But in each of these seasons, right, as the backup, you are consistently getting the easier matchup. And getting that easier matchup, right? You've got a back-to-back, you're playing that game. Quick started 60 games many of those years. So this was not a situation where Bernier was coming in and getting big stretches. He was the backup, right? He played
like a traditional backup.
Yeah, 25, 16, 14 per game, and was putting up worse numbers against lesser competition. If you look at goals saved above average, which takes into account more of quality of shots, things like that. In that time in LA, he was negative 2 out of the 3 years, which means an average goalie, which he clearly is, 2 of those 3 years would have done better than he did.
Didn't they win the cup one of those years, though?
Do backup goalies win Stanley? Yeah. Yes, 2012, they won the Stanley Cup. Well, Jonathan Bernier played 16 games in the regular season. Jonathan Bernier did not step on the ice except for warm-ups. He did not get a single minute of time in that playoff run.
Look, I think Jonathan Bernier was unlucky when he played for LA because he got stuck behind Jonathan Quick in his prime, like in his cup winning years. Of course, you're not going to give Bernier more time. You have prime Jonathan Quick. That's just unlucky for Bernier. And he still managed to put up a 912 save percentage, Carl.
Again, like he's playing against the dregs of the league, though.
The dregs of the league.
The dregs of the league, yes.
Like he'd be playing against current season New Jersey Devils.
Yes. He would be playing against himself in the future. That would be, someone should make a TV show to that, where it's like a time change and he's playing against himself, but it's in hockey.
I'm sure Netflix would give that 2.5 seasons.
We can get Jason Bateman to star in it. He'll be the coach.
Yeah. The like super serious coach who sometimes has a stretch of dry humor.
Yeah.
But just has a stone face the whole time.
Yeah, I like it. All right. So that's the Kings. Now, certainly was not the best goalie on the Kings at that time. But that was not what you argued. You said he was not the worst goalie or that he was not the worst ever. Jason LaBarbera, during that stretch, also played 64 games, had a 906 save percentage and a 295 goals against. Which leads me to think that he might not have been the worst on the LA Kings.
I think that's the only other guy, Jason LaBarbera, even though I've never heard this name before, and somehow he played 64 games. I think that's the only guy who can be part of this conversation. Right. Everyone else didn't play enough.
All right. So this brings us then. So we both agree then not the worst goalie on those Kings teams.
Exactly. Not the worst.
There might have been some seasons, though, where he was. Let's head to Toronto.
Okay.
Where he effectively, in his time in Toronto, split all of that time with James Reimer. During his seasons there, Jonathan Bernier played 151 games. James Reimer, 103. Almost identical saves percentages again, 915 versus 912. A 2.8 goals against versus a 2.98 for James Reimer.
This one was shocking to me. I don't know why I was so surprised by it. I just thought Reimer was good in Toronto.
And yet, just beloved for different reasons.
Just beloved for different reasons. And yet Bernier was better than him. Like there's not a ton of nuance to this one compared to LA, where we had that kind of third guy in there. Like Bernier was not only not the worst, but he was the best goalie in Toronto over this stretch, statistically speaking.
Well, and I think what changes this narrative slightly is that Bernier showed up in Toronto and had a very good first season there. Right. Now, granted, it was like no one else on this team did, but he started almost 49 games, had a 922 save percentage that season. Like was outside of Phil Kessel, like that was JVR. His team didn't make the playoffs, finished just above 500. Dion Phaneuf, this is how long ago. Dion Phaneuf was still the captain of that team, by the way.
Yeah, those were bad years for them.
Right. So that's this team. Okay. Had a great first season, but by the end of it, Jonathan Bernier was putting up a 288 goals against and a 10 points worse save percentage than James Reimer. So I think Reimer got better as his time in Toronto went on, whereas Bernier progressively got worse, and we started to see the downfall of Jonathan Bernier.
Well, and the entire team got worse too. Those are the years in Toronto where it was like by Kessel, by Phaneuf, by whoever, like their entire team. I couldn't even name anyone else on that team. Komarov, Matt Martin.
I was going to say that final season that Bernier was in Toronto, Nazem Kadri led the team in points. Second, P.A. Parenteau.
Oh,
and Leo Komarov clocked in at number 3 with 36 points in a full season.
That's rough. So that's even after Kessel, probably after Bozak. I don't know if Bozak was still on that team.
Bozak was still there. JVR was still there.
It's a
William
bad team.
Nylander showed up on the scene.
That was a bad team. And what did you say? I can look at. I have it here too. Reimer's save percentage was this year.
That year, 918.
Oh, maybe that's why I think so highly of Reimer.
I think because he played better in front of a terrible team.
Of a terrible team, yeah.
All right, but I think we can agree it's not definitive. As if we look at the whole body of work, Bernier not the worst goalie in Toronto.
Correct.
All right, we now take a slight detour and head off to Los Angeles, Anaheim.
Yes. Okay.
Different Los Angeles. And this is the first season that I think we can both agree that he was the worst goalie on this team. Only two goalies played that year. Okay? Dustin Tokarski literally played 10 minutes, so we're not counting him. But he was behind John Gibson. Bernier played 39 games, had a 9-point worst save percentage, and a .28 different goals against. 2.5 for Bernier, 2.22 for Gibson.
I mean, yeah, again, Jonathan Bernier gets stuck behind a starting goalie in his prime, putting up the best numbers of his career. Bernier put up a .915 save percentage that year. If you had asked me to just guess prior to landing in Detroit, because I have a little more Bernier experience with Detroit, prior to landing in Detroit, what the highest save percentage he had in a season was, I would have never said it was above .910.
And he did it repeatedly.
He's and by the way, Carl, I'm saying all these things before I said what I said last week on this show. Like, I'm genuinely surprised. He's better than I thought he was.
So he is, if you take out his 2 years where he barely played, he has played 12 NHL seasons. 7 of those 12 have had a save percentage above .910.
Yeah, that's great.
No, but not outside of your point. I don't care that he got stuck behind John Gibson. He was very clearly the worst goalie on that Anaheim Ducks team.
Yes, he was. Black and white, he was the worst goalie on the team, even though he put up great numbers. You're right, though. He was the worst goalie on that team.
Yes. Slightly better than average. All right. Colorado years. He's again the backup with Semyon Varlamov. Now, this is where it gets interesting because, and this is why I'm going to say that he was not the worst goalie on this, or was the worst goalie on this team. Now, he backed up the entire season. Only one other goalie stepped foot on the ice other than those two, and it was for one game in the regular season. Semyon Varlamov, as he does, gets hurt. Jonathan Bernier has to step in. Does he have a save percentage above .910 that season? Yes. Can he, when facing not the terrible teams in the regular season on back-to-backs, things like that, but when they face the Nashville Predators in the first round of the playoffs, does he put up a 3.87 goals against and an 8.83 getting replaced by the Hamburglar Andrew Hammond? Yes, he does.
Hey, man, all goalies have bad stretches every once in a while. You have a 4-game bad stretch. That happens.
Yes. And trust me, it pains me to look at a 4-game sample size and say that Andrew Hammond was a better goalie than Jonathan Bernier. Trust me. I don't like it any more than you do. But I think he was a worse goalie on that Colorado team.
I mean, we're looking at the numbers and he was worse than Varlamov for sure.
I guess here's what we can say. There was 2 times where he split the net. He was the worst of the 2 goalies that played in the regular season, and he was the worst of the 2 goalies that played in the playoffs. That makes him the worst.
Okay. All right. You know more about this one than I do. You're bringing playoff games into it. How many playoff games did Hammond play that year? Just the one?
He started 2 and came in relief in a third.
Oh, Bernier got yanked in a playoff game?
Yeah.
That does not help my case.
No. He gave up 14 goals in less than 4 games. That's like being a Red Wings goalie, but like in one game.
It's so bad for the playoffs.
Yeah, not good. All right. So we've now decided first set of his career up until 27 was not the worst goalie on his team. Back-to-back seasons. Now in Detroit, and I'm sure those that are not Jonathan Bernier fans are like, why are we still talking about this? We've only got
This is a riveting show
to get through. It's thrilling. Jonathan Bernier in Detroit. Now, this is your expertise. This is really what made you say it. Was he ever in any season the worst goalie on the team?
No, not in my opinion. Not in my opinion. You disagree? You got a face on.
I've got a very big face on. How do you feel about James Howard?
I think that the years that Bernier was with this team, he was better than Jimmy Howard. I love Jimmy Howard. He is a lifelong Red Wing. And in his prime, he was great. But the last 3 years of his career, he was not. And he was hurt a lot. And when he wasn't hurt, he wasn't very good. Now, the team was not very good either, particularly the defense. Very, very bad.
Can certainly agree there. Now, then why in less games does Jonathan Bernier have a 316 goals against and a worse save percentage? His goals saved above average, minus 5.6 versus minus 2 for Howard. Howard playing more games. He has way more opportunity to be trash. Jonathan Bernier, terrible.
Yeah, they're both terrible. This team was terrible, Carl. Why do they have such bad goals against numbers? Because they had Jonathan Ericsson and Danny DeKeyser in front of them. That's why.
But why in that season was his worse?
Was Bernier's worse?
Yeah, I don't doubt, right? Look, it was a terrible team. There was a lot bad. They still had Flash coach in that team.
Yeah, man. Flash was the longest tenured coach in the NHL right now.
Mm-hmm.
Fun fact for your Monday evening.
Thank you. So you're saying even in that first year, you think that Bernier was better than Howard?
Yes.
Because
I'm sticking by it.
I will give you hands down that Jimmy Howard was the worst goalie. I have never seen a stat line like this in the modern era of the NHL. This guy, Jimmy Howard, his last season, started 27 games and had a goals against above 4.
Yeah, it was bad.
Unreal.
Yeah, it was bad.
So that season, certainly.
Then even they brought in Thomas Greiss last year or 2 years ago. I don't remember. I think it was last year.
I think so.
And I thought Bernier was better than him last year. Like to the point where he almost stole the starter position from him.
They essentially split time, right? It was pretty close between the two of them. So I will give you that he was not the worst goalie. I think if you combine both of Jimmy Howard's seasons, for sure, Howard was worse during his stint. So, and then that brings us to this year with the Devils.
Yeah, this year's not good.
And is he both him and Mackenzie Blackwood not having good years?
Yeah. I mean, I'd argue that he's not the worst goalie on this team this year.
I would second that. I'd say,
like again, found himself behind just an awful team. Awful.
Yeah.
But I'm also surprised again that he has his save percentage is over 902.
I like
Who's Nico Dawes?
I like how quickly this slips from this 910. Now you're like, hey, his save percentage is above 900. So pretty good.
He started his career playing for the literal Stanley Cup champions and is now playing for the basement teams.
I think that's the definition of veteran journeyman right there.
But like overall, he's a decent backup goalie, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Like, okay, we went through all these numbers. And look, I'm not going to put my backup anymore and try and work around this. He has decent numbers, league average, maybe a little above league average. I'm talking his career numbers. And I think as a backup, he could be great. And that's kind of what he showed in his career. The years and the teams where he's been a true backup have been much better for him than the years and the teams where he has to take the reins as a starter or split it 50-50.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Yeah, I think he's been good. He's not great. Has there been some terrible seasons? Absolutely. But
bounced around a lot though, hey? I didn't even realize he played for Anaheim. I had no idea.
Yeah, I very much forgot that as well. But yeah, there you go. All right. Shall we eliminate a team?
Yeah, let's do it.
Elimination Station.
All right, folks, this is the Elimination Station where we eliminate a team from playoff contention. I believe this is what got us started on this bend last week because it was during us eliminating the New Jersey Devils from the playoffs when we discussed Jonathan Bernier. So we've got the Devils. Can you remind us the other teams that have been eliminated?
Yeah. So we, like Carl said, the Devils, we've eliminated the Buffalo Sabres, the Chicago Blackhawks, the Seattle Kraken, the Philadelphia Flyers, the Montreal Canadiens, and the Arizona Coyotes. So that's 2 teams from the Central, 2 teams from the Atlantic, 2 teams from the Metro, and 1 from the Pacific.
Well, I think that, you might be leading the witness there a little bit, but I think that helps me make my decision a little bit easier this week.
Well, yeah, I know where I'm going to.
Well, we've kind of been on fire with this as of late.
Yeah, we have, but we're still also in the easy part of the segment.
It's true.
I think it's going to get dicey in the coming weeks.
We are. And now that you say what you said about and I made a comment that maybe I needed to go to the Pacific because we've only eliminated 1 team from out there. We'll see where we go here. So are you ready to make your choice?
Yeah. Should we count down or up? Down. Count down?
Sure.
Okay. I don't
Here, how about this? I'll count down. You count up. When we finish counting, we go.
Okay. This is going to be harder than you think, though. 1, 2, 3.
The Ottawa
San Jose
Senators.
Sharks. Wow.
I was going to go Sharks.
You went
the
Atlantic.
Senators are very much worse than they are right now.
Yeah, and I think just generally speaking, it's not even just right now. We can very safely eliminate the Ottawa Senators.
I'm not prepared with 2 months left in the regular season, and I know the Sharks aren't that great, but I'm not prepared with 2 months left in the regular season to eliminate a team 7 points out of the playoffs.
I think that's totally fair. And when you look at the standings in the Pacific, yeah, they're a lot closer than the Atlantic is right now. Yeah. We're much safer to eliminate the Senators.
So
good. I have no problem with that. That's easy.
Me? All right.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Elimination Station, Ottawa. Now, the question I have for you about the Senators, is this what you thought you would get from the Senators this season?
Yeah, I think so. They weren't expected to be good. They're not dead last in their division. Which maybe Montreal was a bit of a surprise. So there's, some luck at play there, but they're doing better than Buffalo slightly.
Yep. They are a fair chunk back of Detroit.
They're a fair chunk back of Detroit. Yeah. Who's a fair chunk back from the playoffs.
Right. And I think that's what makes this an easier choice too, because when you look at the wild card, Boston and Washington are currently holding that wild card. The top three in this division, Florida, Tampa, Toronto, are running away with it. Right?
Yeah.
Like it is a 20-point gap from Toronto to Detroit. So I think for me, that makes that easier. Boston, 6 back of Toronto in that division, and then Tampa, another 24, or sorry, Ottawa, another 21 points back of that. So
it's not happening this year. Sorry to break it to you, Senators fans.
But better than they have been previous seasons.
Yeah, like I think it's a hopeful year. I think like it's a positive year for them because they've taken another step forward, which is essentially what at this stage of their rebuild, that's what they need to see. That's what they need to do.
Yeah, I'm with you. And what I've been impressed with is at the very beginning of this rebuild, you saw some players start to come up and start to play. And I, not giving them the full credit that they deserved at the time, said they're only producing because someone on this team does. If you give anyone first line minutes, they're going to look better than they actually are. And I'm thinking of Josh Norris, Alex Formenton, Drake Batherson. Hey, I was looking at those and I was like, these aren't the guys that we think they are.
Mm-hmm.
And I might be wrong on that. This might be the guys that we think they are. They're not the stars, but this is some very good depth and like middle of the lineup guys that the Ottawa Senators have here.
Yeah, they're going to be. You said the word depth. Like that's exactly what they're going to be, right? Behind guys like Stützle and Tkachuk, who are going to be their top line producers. I think they're set up pretty well on the back end with Thomas Chabot. Like it's hard to say it with any certainty, obviously, because all of this is kind of voodoo, but they're doing the rebuild the right way.
It is nice to see them doing what is needed to get this done.
They're being patient. They're really not rushing through this. I think the Matt Murray bet didn't pay off the way it needed to. And that's one of those things that you take a risk and it doesn't really set them back in any way. It just delays it.
And I'm not even sure if it delays it. Like they have that cap space. And we know that Eugene Melnyk is incredibly cheap when it comes to all things with this team, but they literally have to hit a cap floor. Right?
Sure.
And this helped them get there, right? Like they have $36 million in cap space right now. They had to spend some money. That Matt Murray being on this team, play him or not, you have to have someone there.
Should we do a deep dive on Matt Murray next week?
I'm going to give you a hint. There have been times when he's been the worst goalie on his team. Spoilers, it happens.
All right, we'll skip that deep dive next week. We'll skip it.
But go ahead.
So what I was going to say is this year. So let's talk about, like, I was going to go into let's fix them here. Okay. They're going to land with a pretty high draft pick in the first round.
Right. Right now, draft odds being what they are currently the 7th worst team in the NHL. So they'll be 7, 8, 9, maybe move up. Because the draft lottery now only does the top 2, correct?
Yes.
So perhaps they move up.
So I guess my question is, do they have a chance to net another first round pick this year at the deadline based on this roster and who's available?
I don't think there's anyone on this roster that could get them.
I wouldn't think so, right? Like Chris Tierney's not going to get you a first round pick. I assume they're going to move him.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Right? Sanford, no. Like I just don't see a situation where a second first round pick lands in their lap.
depending on what they're wanting. I have been pretty impressed with Artem Zub. Impressed enough to like him, but not enough to fully be confident how to say his name. But I've been impressed by what I've been seeing from him this year. Is an unrestricted free agent in 2 years, but does have term for next year. He's a guy that I could see them potentially moving if they don't see him staying long term and getting something a little bit better because he has that extra year and a very reasonable cap hit at 2.5.
Yeah, could be. Wouldn't surprise me. I don't know if that's first. I don't think that's first round draft pick level, but
I don't think so. But you add that to the second that they have from Tampa this year. They've got 2/3 Boston and Vancouver.
Yeah, like they've got a decent amount of picks this year, which is like honestly where they need to be right now. They're not playing for the cup.
No, but like you said, things are getting better in Ottawa. And I think I haven't seen what he's done this year. He's a little bit older of a prospect, but during his junior days, I was super impressed with what I saw from Mad Sogard, a goalie that they drafted 2 years ago in the second round. He's been playing in the AHL, has been decent with Belleville. I'm not sure exactly. Turns out not a huge Belleville Senators fan, but from what I've seen, has done decent. And so I'd like to see what they could have in him.
I mean, I think at least until Matt Murray's done with them, like any goaltending help they're going to get is going to come from within their system, right?
For sure. You can't have $15 million, 8, 14, 13 spent on 2 goalies of that caliber.
I mean, you can, but it's not a good idea. And Ottawa seems to be past making those poor cap decisions.
Yeah.
The other thing I'll say about this team is, and where they are in their rebuild, is at least like the painful part of it's over. They are now entering the fun part. Like they have players on the roster now who are fun to watch, who people can be excited about.
I'm with you on that for sure. And it's true. I mean, we saw last year, right? The Senators fans went through their sicko phase where like they were just getting through and being weird together. I think that's really helped. And now this year we see a lot of them being like, yeah, we know Matt Murray's bad. We know that our owner's terrible, but there's a lot to be excited about and celebrating it. And I think just keep that up moving forward.
I forgot about that sickos thing. That was really weird.
Look, you try being an Ottawa Senators fan, Nick.
No, well, I don't. But the team's come a long way from Uber rides, that's for sure.
For sure they have. All right. Well, welcome to the Elimination Station, Ottawa. Perhaps next week we'll head out to the Pacific and finally eliminate a second team from that division out there.
We'll see.
Lots to come. I mean, we know what you wanted this week. Maybe you just keep riding San Jose until I join you as we count down backwards.
Or maybe I change it up and keep you on your toes.
Not prepared for that. But hey, that's next week's problem. Who knows what could happen?
It's future Carl's problem.
Yeah. Crazy things are happening. All right. Let's head to our Pavel Bure must-watch games of the week. This is where we pick the games that you need to tune into so that you can pick the games that matter and win some prizes. We've got a contest running right now where you head over there and you pick the winning team and the score of each of those. If you pick correctly, you are entered to win a Fourth Line Podcast prize pack. And for this round, it's very likely far too late for you to be able to win this. But the top of the standings at the end of this is going to win a personalized NHL jersey of their choice, which we'll be sending out. And I said last week that it was tight at the top. It is still tight. First and second are separated by 1 point. Brody is 1 point up on Jordan at this point. 5 back of first is Matt, and Adam is 7 back. I think Scott might be out of it, 12 back at this point in time. But with only, and this is 2 weeks from now, March 14th, we are going to be handing out that jersey, resetting the scoreboard. and going again. Head on over to @4thLinePodcast where you can play. But first, we must pick the games to play this game with.
Tight race. Let's give them some good games.
March 1st. We are into March. We have... we picked Flames Wild last week, and the Flames scored 7.
We did pick that game, right?
Yes.
Because I think that's the game for tomorrow as well.
I think that has to be, even though it was not close at all the last time we picked it.
All right. We'll see how the Wild do this time.
Wednesday night, I see right at the top of my list, Blues Rangers.
Yeah.
We haven't talked much about the Blues this year, but Ville Husso's been spectacular in net, replacing Jordan Binnington.
I think the Blues in general have been better than I expected them to be.
Maybe we just talk about the Blues next week.
Deep dive St. Louis.
We're just deep diving everyone. Let's do a deep dive on Jordan Binnington. That'll lead to some dangerous places.
Yeah, I don't think we want to do that.
All right. Thursday, I see one game that leaps out to me. Two, actually.
There's
two good games.
Yeah.
And technically a third at the bottom. One of those later games.
A late one? Yeah. I don't want that one. I think we should do Pittsburgh, Tampa.
Me too. That was the first one that stood out to me. Pittsburgh, Tampa on Thursday, March the 3rd. Carolina and Pittsburgh play the next night. Carolina, for the record, Carolina was the other game on that Thursday. But
we want to do Pittsburgh 2 nights in a row, or should we do Dallas, Winnipeg?
Let's do Dallas, Winnipeg.
Okay.
I do feel like we also had that, but they are 5th and 6th in the Central. Tight matchup. Saturday, I think there's one good game on that Saturday. What do you think?
Saturday, is it Calgary, Colorado?
That's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, that's the best game.
I think that arguably the two hottest teams in the entire league.
Yeah.
Playing on a Saturday night. Great thing to show up for.
Sunday, man, the league gives Buffalo a lot of daytime games.
Yeah.
Do you think it's because they know no one wants to watch?
Yes.
Cool.
Do we go Ottawa here? Get them in a game since we picked them in the Elimination Station?
Plus they're playing Vegas, and that's a good team.
Ottawa, Vegas on Sunday, which brings us to Monday. We've got Battle of Alberta. That might be the one.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, there we go. Those are the games. There are only 13 more chances for you to get points in high sticking, which when I put it that way, literally says the most you can get is 3 points. So if you started now, there's literally no way that you could win. However, if you are at the top, there is certainly still a chance for you to win 39 points on the table every night. Tonight, it's Toronto, Washington, which is currently 3-1 Toronto. And let's see what happens the rest of this way. But
we'll see.
Head on over to @4thLinePodcast with the number 4, and you can pick your score, who you think is going to win. Get those points. Let you know every day, unless I have a very busy weekend, much like Nick. And sometimes we post 3 days at once. Head on over as well to the4thlinepodcast.com. I mentioned already, but we are going to be putting up with this episode, the episode title for this. Normally you might be like, I don't listen to that episode. I don't click on that link and read it because it's just a description of the episode. Today, it is going to also include Mike Leaborn's amazing Jonathan Bernier analysis. So head on over there and check it out. He provided all of the legwork of what we looked at today. Was a big part on him. So very big thanks to Mike for that.
Huge thanks to Mike.
And you can see his work because there's not, I mean, he gave more than we had to offer. So we made sure to save a little bit or a lot, save a big chunk for you to go read. So that's over there. Head on over the4thlinepodcast.com. Subscribe to us wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever it is. Head on over there, hit the subscribe button. And we'll be back next week, like we are every Monday, another Fourth Line podcast.
And it's time for us to wrap up another Fourth Line show. I know what you're thinking. You don't want us to go. When it comes to goalies, Carl can be quite stern. He held my feet to the stats and made me feel the burn. Spelled B-E-R-N.